Welcome to One Quick Question with Infomedia, your source for answers to your questions about websites, digital marketing, and more. I'm your host, Carrie Rollwagon, and I'm here today with Russell Marbut. Welcome, Russell.
Hello.
Russell is a developer here at Infomedia. He is also my husband. And today we are trying to do some episodes on Infomedia and hobbies. So the things we do outside of work. And our producer, Elena, brought this up because she was like, I've been following Russell's new Instagram, and I know he's doing film photography. And I think she was like, why? I mean, she likes it, but...
Yeah.
It does seem like, I mean, you're a developer. That seems very tech-like.
Mm-hmm.
Digital photography exists. Like, that's how we shoot everything. Everything's on phones or whatever.
Yeah.
So what made you think, you know what I'm going to do is learn film photography?
I mean, film photography is just photography. It's just, there's not a lot different about the actual shooting.
Well, then why get film?
Well, I just mean like technically there's not a lot different between shooting digital and film.
So you're kind of doing both.
I am doing both. But I think what you're getting at is why are you shooting film? It seems more like a pain than digital.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not my personal belief. I like film, but it's what the people are asking.
The people want to know, huh? They've been clamoring.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for me to stop holding out on them.
Don't gatekeep.
Yeah. It kind of started like I was playing with digital photography, and then I started to stumble on some videos about using old digicams because they had the sensors on some of these old digicams, and by old I mean like 2000, I mean really 99, but
so
for me
digital
more like
camera is the kind you would use in the early 2000s.
Yeah, like 2005, 2010.
Before we had smartphones.
Yeah.
Cameras on our smartphones.
They had a sensor called a CCD sensor, and because film's gotten a bit expensive lately, especially if you shoot like a ton, people were picking up these old digicams because the sensors on them kind of mimicked film a little bit. And by that I mean, one of the things people don't always like about the newer digital cameras are they're extremely clean, like almost like
really sharp,
almost like sterile to an extent, which is good sometimes when you're going for that, and I like that too. But there's kind of this character that comes along with, film photography or those CCD sensors, and I don't know what exactly made me say I want to shoot film. I just wanted to try it really, and I really enjoyed it. I'm pretty new to photography. I was working on videos beforehand, and I think it's really making me a better photographer because, you load that film in, you have 36 exposures. It costs money, it costs money to buy the film. Film's not super cheap anymore. It costs money to get it developed. It costs money for them to scan it digitally. It's not a ton of money, but it's also
not
free. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with a digital camera, you can just spray and take, 15 pictures on this. It's like, no, every time I press that shutter button, it may be $1, or whatever. So it slows you down and makes you compose the shot more and make sure you're dialing everything in. And so I think that really helps you get better at photography. And it's more analog and tactile. It feels better.
It's fun to click the
load the film,
button,
advance, all that it just feels really good. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I pick up the digital and I'm like, this feels nice too, but it's kind of nice to play off of each other.
Yeah. I think a lot of things like going back to the basics, like even I mostly write on a computer and sometimes I write on a piece of paper with a pen and it's a different experience. Sometimes it does like slowing yourself down, getting back to the basics. I think sometimes really does change the output changes like your creativity, your ability to be creative.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Well, also there's a film lab in town, right? So I
Mhm.
think you maybe discovered them at kind of the same time.
Yeah. Electra Film Lab is the name, and they're in Highland. And that's where I get all my film developed so far. That's another cool thing about film is like, it's kind of like you go drop your film off or whatever, and then you have to wait a week and you get it back and you're just like, how did it go?
Yeah,
It's kind of like,
yeah. And you've been experimenting with different films and stuff, right?
Yeah.
How does that relate at all to when you were first learning development, or is it not like that? Is it anything like other hobbies that you got into, or?
Honestly, not really. I don't think, like, maybe on a very like high level, but I don't think it is like very much like jujitsu or programming or anything. I find it to be a lot different, actually.
Is that because it's like slower, or because it's using like older technology, or just you don't know why it's just different? Yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah.
I think it's just you're getting into a different part of who you are.
Yeah.
In a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
You're just in a different headspace, I think, like a totally different headspace than I am in jujitsu or programming.
Has it changed the way, I mean, because at work, you don't really, like, at least as we're recording, you don't really work with media at work. You program, but then there are videos and photography in that. Do you look at that any differently, or is it just like
I definitely look at everything like that differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also like walk around in the world looking at things differently now. Like I'm constantly like, it's like I'm almost looking through like framing all the time.
Yeah.
In a good way, I think. Like,
yeah.
So
if somebody asked you, like, how did you get started, or how should they get started, like, what's a good first thing to do?
So, I mean, obviously you need a camera. There's a lot of avenues to get cameras.
You found yours on my bookshelf.
Yeah. My camera is your dad's old camera, if I'm not mistaken, which was fortuitous for me. But even if I would have bought that camera, it wouldn't have been that crazy. I think like $150 maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's good film cameras from like the 80s and 90s that are work very well and are not crazy expensive. Actually, one of the places I think that's really good for this, if you're not going to try to find a local shop, is shopgoodwill.com. It's Goodwill, and it's like a bidding thing. So you can find a lot of cameras on there that you can bid on and just kind of set your max bid and maybe get one for a decent price.
I think that's true. I will say, like, I think it depends on how much you're into the equipment, because I think you got one where the like filter or something had like exploded. So it's like you had to clean it up. Like that would not be fun for me. That would just be annoying. So
yeah,
I would think it's a little more of a question mark.
Definitely want to read all the descriptions and stuff and see what you're getting and see, like, because you may be getting it at a cheap price, but it may be the quality of the equipment may be questionable.
And as far as shooting, there's like a film walk in Birmingham, right? If people want to.
Yeah, I actually haven't participated yet, just because I've been a little too busy when they do it. But I definitely plan on it. I think it's called Beeham Film Walk. I don't know if they're associated with Electra Film Lab or not, but they seem to collab a lot. So I think one Sunday a month they pick a location and they meet up and walk around and shoot film.
Yeah.
Seems to be maybe a little bit of a recurrence.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But if you follow that, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
So. Well, cool. So mostly, it sounds like it's not, you didn't necessarily do it because you're like, I want to learn this very practical skill that's going to directly apply to my work or directly apply to something else. It's just kind of like, this is interesting, and like, I'm going to just open up my world a little bit by learning something new.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a creative outlet, I guess you could say.
Well, in the studio here, our video engineer is sitting in the corner, and I'm going to maybe pull him over because I'm going to ask Paul, who is who is a professional photographer, so sort of on the other end of the scale, maybe if he has thoughts on this. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's good. I'm ready.
Okay, Paul. First of all, sorry that I'm making you come on camera. So you're kind of like Russell's on the one side where he's just started getting into this. And I think you're on the other end of the spectrum of like you're absolutely a professional and you have shot. I know you shoot a lot with digital, obviously.
Yeah.
But I also know that you like the, I don't think you like when I quote this, but like the machines of creativity or something. I forgot.
It was
something like that. But I loved the way it sounded. But you're really into like the am I correct in saying like camera bodies, films, like the tech side?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about what we've been talking about?
I love, honestly, anytime I get to pick up a camera, I'm happy. I obviously shoot digital all the time, but I got my start when I moved to Birmingham in like 08 or whatever it was. I got my start assisting a bunch of really successful primarily film photographers. And so that was my introduction, and that's where I fell in love with it. I got my start kind of shooting Super 8 weddings, kind of a little niche there. So I love film. I think it's fantastic. It's the only way to get that particular look. And like film nerds are just the coolest people to hang out with. Like they love the art, they love the technology, they love these old.
A certain perspective. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you find that community, like if you start plugging in with that community, it's a very generous community with their time and their expertise and just their creativity.
Yeah. Well, I think that's even true. Like I know Russell's asked you a bunch of questions and you've been helpful in just getting started. So.
Yeah, and like this isn't the question you asked, but I'll like one of the coolest things about starting to collect this gear, starting to get into film photography, is that all of these lenses are available at like What's on Second here in town, eBay, Shop, Goodwill, as he alluded to, and all of them are very easily adapted to digital systems. So you go out one day, you shoot with like your AE1 or an old Nikon or something like that. Take that lens off, put it on your digital system if you want to, and suddenly you have a really unique look on a modern camera because the coatings are different. Sometimes there's fungus or a little bit of haze in the lens. It looks different, and it can add a really unique look to digital systems. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. Well, as far as like how would you suggest if somebody was like, I'm interested, how do I even get started?
If you're here in Birmingham, you could go to something like What's on Second, or sometimes what's that bookstore down in Hoover, Second and Charles? Sometimes they'll have something like that. Be on the lookout. Like Facebook Marketplace, somebody is always selling like their granddad's little collection. A lot of times it'll be like sort of commodity cameras. It'll be like, it's a film camera, but it's not something rad like a Rolleiflex or something. Yeah. But on the other hand, you can pick up a complete setup for $100. Yeah. And it's just, that's one of the best ways to get into it.
What was that Montgomery shop? Do you remember the name that you went to that they had a ton of we can try to send it to Elena and link it in the show notes if you want.
You can link it. It's in Montgomery. It's like, I'm going to butcher it.
We'll just link it in the show notes if you're interested.
Great camera shop, though. Yeah. Apparently, there's another one very similar in Huntsville, too. And I do remember the name of that one. It's called Sutherland's. So if you're up that direction, apparently that's a cool store.
Yeah. So get a camera, or it seems like even the method that Russell, I know, is like researching a ton and then was like, oh, actually, your dad's camera is good. Like, let's just go this direction. You may even know somebody who has like, it's in their garage or something, or maybe garage is not, maybe there's too much fungus if it's been in the garage. But so just do that. I guess order film. Like you get yours from Electra, right?
I picked mine up from Electra and other places as well sometimes too.
You can get them wherever, and just what kind of film should they start with? Just like a 400, or does it matter?
I mean, it depends on what, if you're shooting outside or inside, really.
I'm just saying a baseline.
Probably 400 or 200 is very safe. Yeah. Either of those,
cool.
You're probably going to be fine.
But also get used to researching, because that's what probably if you're into this at this point, you just are you're gonna need to kind of look at that. So
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the fun part, at least for you. I would think for you too, but.
What's that? The research?
The research.
Oh yeah, I'm a giant nerd. So anything that I can dig into like that, I'm happy.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate it, and I think.
I'm gonna retreat to my corner.
All right.
To your corner.
Yeah. So, One Quick Question is developed and hosted by me, Carrie Rollwagon. Our producer is Elena Harmond. Our theme music is by Brad Davis. And our video and sound engineering are done here in the Infomedia studios. We appreciate Paul for that and also for jumping in whenever we have more questions. Find show notes or find out what Infomedia can do for your website at infomedia.com/quickquestion. Sorry. We like to leave you with this thought. A real expert helps to clarify, not confuse. So don't take website advice from someone who can't give you a straight answer.